You're listening to Voices of the 99%, Occupy DC's live talk radio show. Activists serving the community, working together to empower the voiceless through a collective exchange of knowledge and ideas. Email us, radio@occupydc.org.
Another world is possible. We can be, and we must be, the trailblazers for the movement.
It is our duty to fight. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and protect each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We're back here on V of 99 Radio. I'm Mariah Blank, and we're about to get into Lucha Feminista. As you know, on this segment of the show, we often highlight particular women that are doing things within the community that are admirable and inspiring. And so we wanted to talk with Stacie Reimer this evening. And she is one of the founders of the Amara Legal Center, which just opened in the DC metro area. The Amara Legal Center is a nonprofit dedicated to providing free legal services to domestic survivors of sex trafficking in the DC metro area. Welcome, Stacie. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your organization? I mean, I see that it's relatively new to the area, so why don't you tell us what you guys have been up to and how it got started?
Sure. So we're the Amara Legal Center, and we've actually been up and running for 1 month now. We started the week after Labor Day of this year, and we're providing direct legal services to survivors of domestic sex trafficking here in the D.C. metro area, meaning that there's actually primarily girls that are being trafficked for sex or bought and sold for sex right inside of our city of D.C.
How did you get started in this work?
So I came to law school. I came to D.C. to go to law school about 3 years ago, and I just graduated from Georgetown Law. And I have been familiar with the issue of human trafficking through my experience as a Peace Corps volunteer in Eastern Europe. However, when I came to D.C. and started law school, I realized that it was also an issue here within our own borders. And so I began doing internships and taking classes on human trafficking, and that's where my interest grew. And then I also learned that through these internships that survivors have a very common set of legal needs, and they are not being, at this moment, are not being met in D.C. We're the first organization of its kind in D.C. to provide civil legal services to victims of domestic sex trafficking.
What kind of legal needs are you talking about?
So the biggest one that I've seen so far is expungement of records, meaning that pretty much every client that I've worked with has had a criminal record. A lot of times they're only arrests for prostitution or related charges, not a conviction. And these are somewhat simple to get expunged or removed from their records. However, they really do need the help of an attorney to help them with the paperwork process, filing in court, and basically walking them through the entire process. And
right.
From that issue, the expungement of records, the idea that they have been arrested for prostitution comes a host of other legal issues, such as custody of their children. A lot of times they lose their children because of this. Public benefits. They also could lose public benefits because of their arrest or conviction for prostitution. And then another service that we want to provide is civil protection orders or restraining orders against their pimps or their jobs, which are the buyers of sex for protection purposes.
Like, what is the community of this in D.C.? I mean, what is the scope of the need within D.C. specifically?
So we're actually conducting a study right now to find out how many individuals have sought social services as victims of trafficking here in D.C. and or in the D.C. metro area. And so far I know with one organization I've been working with in Baltimore in 2012, they had 125 unique clients come to them seeking services. And another organization here in D.C. had about 300 clients seeking services in 2012. So I'm estimating that the numbers are even greater than that because there are about 5 organizations in the D.C. metro area providing social services to domestic victims. And so I don't have exact numbers, but I'm estimating over 500 individual people a year are identifying themselves as victims of trafficking. There's also other victims that are not even self-identifying as such and therefore not seeking services and unidentifiable at this moment.
Just for people that are maybe less familiar with these sorts of issues, what distinguishes somebody that's identifying as somebody who's a victim of sex trafficking versus somebody that's a sex worker or somebody that's doing something what distinguishes that? How do you know who's doing it against their will and who's voluntarily?
Right, and there is a gray line there. It's a blurry line. However, under the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, which is federal law, to be a victim of trafficking, you have to have been under forced fraud or coercion. However, if you're a minor, you do not need to prove forced fraud or coercion. So basically, any minor that is being bought and sold for sex commercially is a victim of trafficking. And anyone over the age of 18, if they can prove forced fraud or coercion, they are a victim of trafficking as well. However, it's important to point out that the average age of entry into this field or lifestyle for these girls is between the ages of 12 and 14. So therefore, if you enter at the age of 12, you're being repeatedly raped every night by different johns or buyers of sex, as well as buyer pimps. And you continue in this lifestyle where you are absolutely coerced and held there. When you turn 18, it's very, in my mind, it's very hard to say that person is now a sex worker who has chosen this lifestyle just because she turned 18. And so there's still an element of coercion there that I believe follows into adulthood.
Right. I could see that. I have a little bit of experience just because I spent time homeless as a teenager, and a lot of my friends were sucked into that kind of work. And the thing that would always come up was this, we would be out there spare changing and stuff like that because we were too young to work. And, a madam or a pimp or somebody would come up and try and recruit us. They'd say, you need to put down that cup. We can get you $500 tonight. And, you would have been out in the rain, sitting there shaking your little cup for hours to just make a handful of change. And $500, a hotel room, it all sounded really nice. So even if it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be negative coercion, threatening. It can be, this enticement. And I remember a good friend of mine did that when she had just turned 14, and she ended up in that lifestyle. But the first night, nothing serious happened. She just had to kiss somebody that was 45. But sure enough, by the second time that she did it, they raped her really badly and stuff like that. And so it's really, it can be very misleading. And then also, because some of these girls take the bait and take those kinds of positive incentives, then I feel like it leads to a certain amount of self-blame when bad things do happen. They feel like they've been a fool, and are too ashamed to come forward. Is that something you feel like happens a lot?
Definitely. I mean, and what I've seen, the girls that I've worked with have primarily been working with pimps who present themselves as boyfriends. So it's very similar to what your friend experienced, where he'll see, say a pimp sees a homeless girl at a bus stop, and she's crying. She ran away from home. A pimp will approach her and say, hey, are you hungry? Do you want me to buy you some food? And then, hey, you're really beautiful. I want to be a part of your life. And so the girls will get lured in that way and actually very much so see the pimp is a boyfriend figure. And then eventually the pimp will say, you know what, you're living with me, you're eating my food all the time. I need you to actually do some favors for me. I need you to start working for me. And even after they've experienced so much trauma of being raped by so many other men, they will still identify the pimp a lot of times as their boyfriend. And right. It's very confusing, and that's why a lot of times these girls, the majority of them do not self-identify as victims of trafficking because they're actually seeing themselves as, self-surviving, doing what they have to do to get by, and helping their boyfriend out. And when you're that young, it is very, very confusing. And when you don't have anywhere else to go, if you're homeless or you're in foster care or you have a bad home situation, a lot of times it does seem preferable to live with a pimp initially.
So how do these girls get referred to?
And so our model is to actually work with the social services agencies who have the girls referred to them. Usually after they're arrested, the girls will be referred to a local social services agency. And so our model is to actually go into those agencies and do legal intake there. And that prevents the girls from having to go to one more agency, one more office, one more unfamiliar face. And I've been doing that up in Baltimore, and it's just been working really well. And so now we're getting ready to expand into the rest of the D.C. area.
Have you been having success getting funding and support for this organization so far?
Yes and no. We have gotten a couple checks in the mail, 2 checks in the mail so far. We're having our first fundraiser on October 22nd at Penn Social. It's going to start at 6 p.m., and you can buy tickets online. We have all the information on our website. So this fundraiser in a couple weeks is our big kickoff party. And from there, we're going to start applying for grants. We are a registered nonprofit in D.C., and so we are now eligible to apply for grants. Also, the thing that all of the staff members are doing right now is applying for fellowships, which are, a chunk of money to support a staff member to do a project under the Amara Legal Center. And so we're hoping to fund ourselves through fellowships and then fund our operating costs through grants and fundraisers, and also private donations.
How many people do you feel like really understand the gravity of this problem right now?
I believe the scope of knowledge is somewhat small on this issue. Many people have heard of international trafficking and the idea of, women being trafficked from Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia into the States or around Europe. And that is somewhat well known now, but people are very unaware of the idea that it's also happening domestically. And when I say domestically, again, the average age of entry is 12 to 14, 95% female, 87% African American here in the D.C. area. And, these are our girls, and very few people actually understand what's happening. And what's happened so many times when I've actually explained to someone what's going on, they don't believe me, they're shocked. It's very hard to actually process what's going on because it's happening right in our neighborhoods.
Do you feel like the lack of awareness is an obstacle in terms of getting the information about your organization out there or getting funding and things like that?
Yeah, I think it is. I had a contact of mine approach a private donor, and I wasn't even aware of the private donor's name or anything like that, but the private donor said, no, we don't fund sex trafficking. And there wasn't an explanation as to why, but what I've heard, just kind of talking to other people in this field, is that it is something that seems a little controversial, something that is not well known, and something that maybe large foundations do not want to be involved in. And there's also a criminal element to it, and so there is fear that you're funding this organization that could be helping criminals, girls that are charged with prostitution, or the girls could be in unsafe situations because their pimps are criminals. And so it is a controversial issue, and something that I think is, because people don't understand the gravity of the situation, the actual innocence of the victims in the situation, that it could be an obstacle to funding. However, getting the word out has been, so far for us at least, has been quite amazing. We've got quite a few followers on Twitter and Facebook already, and word is getting around in the community. So we're reaching out to, the people that are already aware of this issue are very excited about it, but I can definitely tell you that I'm having trouble reaching people that are unaware of the issue at all.
That's interesting that you say that it has this sort of controversial element to it, because I suppose for people that work within activist circles that are familiar with efforts around awareness of the rights of sex workers and things like that, it's less of a kind of a strange topic to bring up. But now that you say that, I could totally see how the taboo of sex work in general would create an obstacle in terms of people being able to understand when it's the element of trafficking, the element of coercion, and the element of abuse that's involved.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think for some foundations it's much easier to fund, say, kids that are orphans or elephants that are, need medical care in another country, something like that, it's going to end in some kind of a positive, feel-good story. Whereas with our girls that we're working with, it's proven time and time again that many of the girls go back to the lifestyle after they've been helped out of it.
Right. It's kind of the same thing when you see issues with people trying to help drug addicts and stuff like that.
Exactly, yeah. And so you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And I think that maybe some organizations or foundations are not quite excited to get involved in something like that. So I can see how that would not be very appealing to funders if they're looking for results that they can talk about, positive results that they can talk about to their own, donors.
Well, I think this is a great project. I'm glad that something like this is sort of kicking off, because it seems like there's a very obvious need for it, and I think that clearly it takes a certain understanding of these things to see past the taboo, to see past the obstacles.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So tell us a little bit about what the schedule of the events you have coming up one more time, and where we can find more information about the Amara Legal Organization.
Sure. So to find information about us in general, just go to amaralegal.org. So it's AMARALEGAL.org is our website. And then our first event coming up is on October 22nd at Penn Social, starts at 6 p.m. And we're selling tickets online on a website called brownpapertickets.com. And so if you go to that website and then type in, the name of the event is Juggling for a Cause, so juggling is in jugglers, will pop up right away. And the event is going to feature 2 jugglers that are internationally ranked. One of them is ranked as the 2nd best juggler in the world, and it's a very artsy Cirque du Soleil kind of performance. There's going to be drink specials throughout, and then also a raffle of local businesses have donated prizes. So a raffle of prizes of local businesses. And then we'll be sharing more about the issue of domestic sex trafficking here in D.C., and people have an opportunity to learn more about the Amara Legal Center and our work.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will be following everything that you're doing, and thank you so much for taking the time to tell us a little bit about your organization, and we hope to support you in any way that we can.
Thank you so much, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you about this issue. Thank you.
This is Voices of the 99%. Follow us on Twitter at OccupyDC Live.